Welcome back to the channel. This is the Casuals. I'm Jin,
And I'm Saki.
and today's episode is Anime Talks. And if you're wondering why I sound so dead right now, it's because we're recording it early in the morning. We couldn't get our usual recording time just because something came up for both of us, I guess. And so we're recording in the morning, and so yeah, my brain kind of short circuited at the intro there, but we're gonna keep it in because we're not professionals. So, the anime we're going to talk about is Yuru Camp or Laid Back Camp. And before we even talk about this anime, rather, I want to just get the point across is that, um, if you haven't noticed already, we're not really, rather, this type of, I guess, podcast or recording, we're not looking to review things professionally. We because I may know a lot about anime, I may watch a lot of anime, but Saki has more limited exposure to anime, so it's more like to give kind of like a viewpoint between someone who doesn't really watch anime and or read manga and someone who really does watch anime and manga. So we're not professionals. If you're looking to come here and with seeing the levels of, I think it was called what's that podcast, Trash Taste Podcast or something like that. Go to them if you want to hear actual high level talks of anime. We're just your casual the peasants. um and so jumping right away into Yuru Camp. I remember I told you about this, and I think it was kind of obvious from the start when I first talked about the name. It's an anime about camping, right?
Yeah.
And what were your thoughts before, if you remember, before even going into watching a camping anime, rather?
Um, I didn't really know because I do glamping. I don't do camping.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it was I kind of knew, but I've never done before. So it was like really interesting to see how it's actually done.
Mm. I guess for clarity's sake, and for those who may be watching and may not know, what is your, I guess, definition of glamping and camping? Like, where's that line? Like, where do you cross that line from camping and glamping? And rather, what is glamping too?
Well, to me, glamping, I don't have one, but we usually rent a condo with beds
Mm-hmm.
and like indoor plumbing and
Mm-hmm.
kitchen and all that. So we don't have to bring a lot of equipment. We just bring food.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's camping, which is you set up a tent outside, you need a sleeping bag, you need a little gas stove or whatever, a
Mm-hmm.
table and all that. You got to bring like everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I think that's considered camping, and mine is literally glorified camping, so glamping, where we don't need to worry about all those different
Yeah.
things.
And I guess as a side tangent, a lot of vlogs, like those type of travel vlogs, whatever, where people go out and quote unquote camp or
Yeah,
stay at places where more remote places. A lot of the times they say they're camping. Now, well, back then, nowadays it's gotten better in terms of classifications, but like back then, a lot of people would try passing off glamping as camping, which was kind of annoying. um,
yeah, I remember those days.
but now it's getting more and more specific because as more and more content emerges for that kind of domain, I guess, more and more subsets of that content gets diverges and diverges and gets more specific, right? So now you have a lot of content of people traveling out to places with their car. They don't call it camping, they call it like car or something, I think. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, are they like going like a big van or something
Yeah,
like
big
that?
van, and then some of them, like, even there's even a smaller subset of that where they go in a smaller car, and then
Yeah,
they do videos out of that. And then there's people who they don't call it camping at all. They just go into like a RV, but like they go into those like very specific models of I guess RVs. I don't know what they're called in because I know there's a very specific type of vehicle in Japan for that kind of stuff, but it's not an RV because it's not big as an RV. It's pretty small, but it has all the the kitchen sink and everything, and then the bed making, and electricity and everything, it's a lot smaller. I would say it's average at least half the size of a normal RV. And I don't remember what I know those exist in America too, but I don't remember what they're specifically called. Do you know?
Nope, I don't know what they're called. I would say there's RVs and then there's like those bigger vans. But
Okay,
I don't know
gotcha.
the actual term either.
Yeah. And then there's a whole like another category of like getting regular vans and then converting them into like quote unquote mini homes.
Yes, I have seen those lately pop up a lot more.
And one thing that was really bad in the beginning was that when this content started first emerging, well, it's people have been doing that, but like when the content started first emerging, becoming more popular, um, people made it seem like it was a really nice thing to do. And they usually hit all the bad parts, which is like trying to find a place to park, you know, no Wi-Fi, constantly trying to look for constantly having to refill water necessities, and you don't really have that nice kitchen space, and you're on the move technically all of the time. Um, and so people really looked at that and was like, yeah, wow, that looks so cool. And then more and more people started calling it out, being like, hey, this is kind of just glorified, like reality. It's like reality TV show in a sense, right? Um, it's not realistic. And then so more and more content started coming out with people actually showing what it's like, actually like all like the pain in the butt type, things they have to deal with every day.
Yep, like a bathroom,
Yeah.
laundry, grocery shopping, like it's a lot more than people think.
Yeah, and we take those for granted, especially when you live in a household where you didn't really have to focus on it that much. Um,
Yeah.
and so, there's that whole category and everything like that, and that whole type of style of I guess traveling and staying outdoors essentially. Um, but enough of that. But I really want to bring it back to like that whole like glamping versus camping. There is one thing that I do want to talk about before we even get into the anime again, which is what do you consider this version of camping where you go on a campsite and you are still far away from cities and towns, right? But you're on a site where there is at least a person, like kind of like the overall administrator who lives in a building, or is usually there like kind of like a normal job, like a certain time frame, and they can provide you if you wish to do so. And it depends on the site where they give you, logs for fire or like wood for fire, or like there's other facilities like kind of like those outdoor kitchens. If you wish to use it, you don't need to use it, um, and things like that. So, what would you consider that kind of camping? Would it still fall under actual camping, or would it be like almost on the side of glamping?
No, I'd say that's still more towards regular camping. I would say if you had to get your own wood and like forage for stuff, that I'd consider that like hardcore camping.
Mm,
Because like you'd have to get your own food, like let's say you're at a lake, you have to like fish for your own food, and then you
yeah,
gotta cook it yourself. There's no, or dig a hole to use the bathroom. I'd consider that like hardcore camping.
gotcha. And most people cannot do hardcore camping. It's a hard thing to do in the first place.
Yeah, like using a leaf to replace toilet paper or something.
Yeah.
That's a little intense, I would say.
Yeah. So for I guess the general people, camping is good. Camping is fine when like we would classify it as regular camping, even if you're on a site where there may be some supervision in terms of someone just being there if you need something.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. And I feel like that is honestly the best way to go camping, because who knows what would happen, right? You can get into a sudden emergency, and if you're all alone, or you may be with other people on the camping site, but there's no you know, no real way to get help, um, because of the fact that most people who go into the more hardcore camping are probably like far away from any access of convenient vehicles, right?
Yeah. I would
So,
say,
mhm.
yeah, going on a campsite's probably the safest option.
Safest, and you still get a good experience of what camping is.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so that's basically what Yuru Camp is all about, right? It's about going camping, and the way I think this is really common in Japan too. Is that like most people go camping on camping sites because it's just the way it is. Um, and so going into Yuru Camp now, the main characters, right?
Hmm.
What were your first impressions? I'll read off their names and describe them just to give you a refresh. Nadeshiko, the pink-haired girl,
Uh, I thought she was hilarious. She
because
she,
uh
she had so much energy, but it was like chaotic energy, so she reminded me of a dog.
yeah, um, Nadeshiko is really, really, really reminiscent of a dog. Like the way they portrayed her as like a dog. I don't. Yeah, and I think they even called her a dog at one point.
I think
Or
so, yeah.
made her akin to a dog. Like commented on that if you remember.
Yeah.
Um, and what's even funnier, I believe, is like when we first met her, it wasn't like a direct character introduction because we actually met a character called Rin. She's Rin, and she's the the one who camped a lot.
Yeah, the solo camper at first.
Yeah. Um, and it started off with her going to the setting up her usual camp stuff, and then like she meets Nadeshiko, the pink-haired girl, when she
Hmm.
at like the station, whatever, kind of away from the campsite. You know what we talked about, that whole like administrative side where they're
Yeah,
just like
he's
near it.
like knocked out on the bench.
Yeah, knocked out on the bench in winter.
She just
Specifically
built,
winter. Oh, what'd you say?
she's just built different, man.
Yeah, she is built different. And like, mind you, I don't think she even had like a jacket. She was just like normal clothes.
Yeah, I think she said, if I remember correctly, she was there to go see Mount Fuji or
Yeah,
something.
she was. And so what happened was, Rin saw the girl and she was just like, huh, she can fall asleep like that. And then, um, you know, she went inside the administrative building to do something. And then she came out and, the girl was still sleeping, which was Nadeshiko. And she was like, what a weirdo, right? And then she went on, went to her campsite, did whatever she wanted. And nighttime came and she's like, oh, I have to use the restroom. So she goes to the restroom on the, the facility side. And she notices that Nadeshiko's not there anymore, the pink-haired girl. And so and then she goes into the restroom. I think she comes out, and then as she's coming out, and she has a flashlight, she notices, um, at the last moment that there's a figure in front of her, and she immediately screams because that's creepy and like not dead of night, but very close to dead of night. And it was alone when you're coming in, and you come out, and there's suddenly someone there. It turns out it's Nadeshiko. She woke up too late, and she was like, I can't see Mount Fuji now. I'm just like, I'm kind of screwed because I'm kind of far away from home.
Yep, I remember that. The introduction of her. It was, yeah, it was, because she did go to the bathroom. She came out, and then all of a sudden her face was just there, and she like freaked out. I would freak out,
Yeah,
especially in dead of night. Just randomly walk out of the bathroom, and all of a sudden, like a few feet away from you, there's just someone there standing and staring at you.
yeah. And then so we get the introduction, basically the two main characters, right? Nadeshiko and Rin. And so we get to learn more about them. And I think one thing I really want to touch upon that we really haven't really like touched upon yet is the voice acting, right? Um,
Hmm.
I immediately like fell in love with like the way Nadeshiko's voice actor portrayed her, like the way they gave her that kind of like the way she talked. It was very fitting, don't you think?
I think it was all the characters were pretty fitting.
Yeah. And uh, here's something, I guess, another like kind of sidetrack that specifically about voice acting is that as you get more and more into anime and you watch a lot more anime, right? You'll hear voices and you're like, oh, I've heard that voice before, right? And you'd be like, oh, it's from this character, right? And this and that. So you'll recognize the voice actor, and sometimes a voice actor is associated with the character very strongly. And so what happens is when you watch a completely different anime or whatever game whatsoever and all that with voice actors, sometimes that image overlaps of that previous character, and it isn't, for me personally, it isn't really pleasant a lot of the times just because you really want to focus on the character. And as to whether or not that is bad voice acting or not, I don't know. Because theoretically, uh, perfect in a theoretical world, a perfect voice actor would be able to um make it so that their voices are almost undistinguishable um from each character to another. Like you would never be able to recognize them. And then when you look at the cast list, you're like, wow, that was them, right? But in reality, that's not how it works. Certain voice actors are hired for certain roles because of their way their voices are portrayed, and you want that kind of voice, right? So it is inevitable that certain archetypes will overlap between different projects, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but for you, that isn't really an issue because, well, one, you haven't been exposed to that much anime, so every voice is going to be new for you, technically.
Right.
Um, so, you know, for me, it was a delight for, I guess, both of us that the way Nadeshiko was voiced is, very, very pleasant to listen to, right? She has, like, that hyperactive voice, but also that, that old granny voice that she sometimes brings out.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's pretty true.
Yeah, I really love it. And then Rin, I think that she also did a very great job at like voicing a character who's more introverted and also kind of like almost I would say spontaneous reacting, if that makes sense. You remember?
Yeah, I could see that.
Like when she gets surprised, she's like, "Oh," like.
Yeah.
And I think one thing you really did like about her is later on it's revealed that she's really, really likes dogs.
Yeah, they did mention, or not mention, but they did reveal that once they brought in that other character, right? With her dog.
Yeah, I'm forgetting her name all of a sudden. I really only remember the two because right now off the top of my head, one because I'm kind of tired.
Yeah.
um, so I looked it up just in case. Um, give me a moment. It would be Enna, Saito Enna. She's the one, the very shortcut bob hair with the
Yeah, dark
Chikua.
hair, right? Black hair.
Yeah, black hair. She's the
Yeah.
friend. She's a close friend of Rin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so oh, and I also got this wrong. Rin's name is not Shizuoka. It's Shima. um,
Ah,
but she goes by Rin. And so Enna is also just. We'll just talk about her since the dog came up. But Enna is she's kind of a less explored character, I would say. Don't you think?
I'd say the least explored. Yeah.
Yeah, mainly because one, um, she's not supposed, I guess, like in a way she's not supposed to be like she is, but like also she's not, if that makes sense. She's kind of in that story, she's kind of an outsider to the whole main crew, but she's also part of it. It's kind of weird. It's like there's a weird dynamic, right? um but in reality I do think it actually makes sense because sometimes that's how friends groups are, right? You sometimes only meet up for very certain activities. You get along with them well, but sometimes you don't just meet up all the time, like the way Rin and Nadeshika are portrayed, where they always meet up constantly.
Yeah, I would agree. Like the one friend that's in your group, but not in your group. I want to say.
Yeah, but it's not like they're a complete outsider or anything. They're still like you get along with them really well, right? You enjoy being around with them, but it's just that one certain activity that you usually meet up for. Not to say that this is specifically this character, but that's the closest type I can think of. Um, and so, I guess we'll go into the other characters. Do you remember Aoi Inuyama, the blonde-ish girl? Not blonde hair. It's more like brown.
Dirty blonde.
Yeah, dirty blonde. And she's the one that likes to troll people a lot.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
She's a very amusing character in the fact that she really likes to try and troll everyone. Whenever she gets the chance. What did you think about her?
I liked her character just because of the trolling and how, like, I guess gullible Narishiko is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, whenever she would say something, I think eventually she kind of caught on,
Yeah.
and she was like, "Are you sure you're telling the truth?" kind of thing.
Yeah, and then
And
she would
then
always have that weird expression.
she'd always have that weird face when she was actually like lying,
Mm-hmm.
which was hilarious.
Yeah. And then the last character, or part of the main crew rather, the last character would be Chiaki Ogaki. I think more of referred to Ogaki, the one with the glasses.
Oh yeah. Her, the club, like their club leader. I want
Yeah.
to say
Um, I really enjoyed her too, just because she was really funny overall.
she was funny, and then she would how I want to say it. Like I remember they would like like create challenges to be like, oh, first one to here wins or something.
Oh yeah.
And then like 2 seconds later, you just see her like dead on the floor because she doesn't have the stamina.
I think she's the one where she's like the type of character. Well, she's not the type of character, but like the way they portray her, or and like her I guess actions, right? Or like the typical actions of someone who talks big but falls short.
Yeah.
But she doesn't do that, if that makes sense. It's just the way they portray her, and like not in a bad way. She's just like, hey, let's do this, right? And then like it turns out miserably or something like that, you know. But
Yeah.
she's not a bad person. It's not like she talks herself up. She's just really into camping, and so she's kind of like that. She tries acting experience. I think that's the better way. She tries acting experience. In reality, she just isn't. um,
Yeah.
but
A little bit off topic.
uh huh,
Would you say, do you remember a while back the beach
yeah.
bonfire episode? Would you say she's kind of like Billy Bob?
I wouldn't say so, because in some ways she's more responsible than Billy Bob, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just when she tries doing things out of her scope, that's when she fails. Which I think she can, like, she does things that she can do, like, reasonably well, you know? Being a leader, setting
Uh-huh.
up plans and everything properly. Um, Maybe one or two mishaps, but outside of that, like, she doesn't really mess up, if that makes sense.
I mean, there is that one episode where they went, like three of them went camping and almost froze to death.
Oh yeah, that's a whole different topic. um, or rather, we'll get to that in a bit. Which I also want to talk about too, which is pretty interesting. Um, and so we have that main cast, right? And Aoi, the girl who chose a lot, and Ogaki are two original members of the camping club, which had basically no other members, and so they got this really tiny like room that was basically a storage room, but like instead of it being a typical storage room where like a regular room, it's like a very thin like width but long room.
Yeah, it's like a skinny hallway almost.
Yeah. That was their camping club room, because typically I guess in Japan, the way it's portrayed in anime or manga is that the less members you have, the less budget you get, and the less priority you get. So, because they only have two members, and technically they're not even a real club because they don't have four members to meet the minimum requirement, they got the storage room out of pity, I guess.
Yeah, at least I got something.
Yeah. And so Nadeshiko, the energetic girl that she is, manages to stumble upon the camping club and joins them. So there are three members. And so that leaves the two other cast members, Rin and Enna, who actually, funny enough, I don't think they ever officially joined.
I don't think they did. They
Um,
just kind of
Tag along.
tagged along with them, but they never like joined their club.
Yeah. But, that's just how it is, and that doesn't just stop them from camping altogether. So, you know, just a kind of interesting thing that like they're kind of like the honorary members, but they're not really the members. Um, so,
I
mhm,
would say they're like the friends that tag along with you.
yeah. And so I think what's really cool about this anime is that you're exposed to camping as a solo camper, right? Rin. Um, and it goes on. It's kind of like a journey of her learning that despite her being more introverted and not wanting to interact with many people, going group camping is pretty fun, especially when you have it with the right people.
Yeah, just different experience.
Yeah, and in the other flip side, I guess Nadeshiko, who's only really camped at this point with a group setting, learns that even solo camping can be nice.
Yeah, that's right. Nearing the end, she wanted to try solo camping.
And she successfully did. And it was a very enjoyable experience to watch. There's so much we can talk about Yuru Camp, but one thing I guess I do want to moving on to the main points is that one nice thing about this anime is that despite Rin and Nadeshiko being kind of portrayed as the two main protagonists of the anime or story, it didn't necessarily focus on both of them, one or the other, or both at the same time all the time. There was a time where there was a trio, which was Aoi, Ogaki, and Ena. They both there was like a whole episode dedicated to them of trying out camping on their own, and that kind of went wrong because they didn't account for elevation, and so it was a lot colder than they expected. And it was almost kind of like a serious point, but in the end, like it didn't get too serious. Like someone else was there to help them out, But I think it was a nice change of pace, because it was those three and minimal interaction with the other two protagonists, I would say, in that story. And you get to learn more. Well, not necessarily more, but you get to just see an environment without the main protagonist, so to speak, right?
Yeah, that's like one of the few times I guess that would happen.
Yeah. And that's kind of rare in, storytelling in general, right? Because when you set the two main, or, the protagonists, or, more than one protagonist, usually the story revolves around them, and side characters don't really get focus. So it was a nice thing to see focus on the side characters. And even quote unquote, even more of a side character, Nadeshiko's sister, Sakura, do you remember her? The glasses?
Oh yeah.
The
Okay.
one who would drive.
The older sister, the
Yeah.
driver.
Even she got somewhat of a little bit of focus near the end. Do you remember? Like, it kind of, like, it gave you hints here and there. Like, basically gave you small bits in here that she really likes to drive, right? But we never knew exactly why she really liked to drive. All we knew is she really liked to drive to places alone. And it wasn't near until the end where, like, they basically revealed that she just likes to visit places where, talked about, like, where they're talked about on shows, and, it's like, hey, you gotta go try this place. And she's like, all right, I'll try it. She's that type of person where she just doesn't mind going out of her way to try recommended spots. And I thought that was a nice thing, a small little bit. And you get to see her character more and more, that she's a really, really kind and caring sister. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, she was a really, really caring sister. Because I guess that one instance where the Nadeshiko went solo camping,
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't technically following her, but she was always like around to make sure she was okay.
Yeah. And not to mention, she always drove Nadeshiko around. Like during the very first episode, she came to pick up Nadeshiko during late at night because Nadeshiko made that mistake of sleeping. And it's a reoccurring thing where she doesn't mind like taking, even if it's really late at night, she doesn't mind driving because, it's her little sister,
Yeah, didn't she have a bike at that time though in the first episode? Like how Nadeshiko just get to that spot? Wasn't
Oh
it
yeah,
a
she had a bike. She had a bike.
Okay.
And Nadeshiko really likes biking, by the way, if we forgot to mention. But yeah, that was another nice thing. And then Minami Toba, the teacher.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh boy. TLDR, she's kind of an alcoholic, but I guess in a way, she's a responsible alcoholic.
Yeah, she can control it, but she's definitely an alcoholic.
Yeah. And there was like one time where she like messed up because she just out of habit drank alcohol, and she was like, oh,
Yeah.
and that she couldn't drive anymore, and responsible, sent off the students in a safe method of transportation. And so, there's all these characters, there's even more characters that we haven't talked about, and I guess one more character we should probably talk about, the grandpa.
Oh, Rin's grandpa. Okay.
Yeah. He was very minimally talked about, or even mentioned or showed, but during the times they did show him, he was portrayed as like, that kind of like cool grandpa, solo camping all the time.
Yeah, like the Giga Chad grandpa.
And he's the reason why Rin got into camping. And, overall, like, all these characters are really cool. And I really enjoyed it, right? And so overall, I guess vibe, it was really comfortable to watch, right?
Oh yeah, I really laid back, I want to say.
As the title does indeed mention. But
But
yeah,
yeah, it was actually laid back. You could just relax. It wasn't really like an action. It was action anime. It was just kind of just a slower pace, which is nice.
yeah, and you seem to have enjoyed it a lot.
I did. It was interesting because like I said, I've been glamping but not camping, so it was really interesting to see like how camping is done.
Yeah. I think I've only gone camping once in my life, like outside of a big group, big group. So, and the one time I went camping was with my family, and I only remember it being near a river. Uh, and I remember going to that river, and then I remember staying in the camp. I think I've been camping several times. I just don't remember. There's only one time where I remember of that one instance of camping. So, yeah. And so, oh yeah, and one other thing I want to talk about. It's kind of funny how the one of the big focuses in that anime too is Mount Fuji.
Oh yeah, like every time they go camping, they gotta see Mount Fuji.
Yeah, and I think I remember one time commented, "Hey, isn't this just the same exact view, even though they're in a
Yeah,
different
'cause I thought
location?"
it, I thought it was, but it was like no, it was like a couple hundred feet the other way. I'm like, oh okay, yeah, sure.
Um, so yeah, I mean that's not like it's I guess it's that if that's one nitpick you had to do, that would probably be the only one really, which is that one.
Yeah, how Mount Fuji had to be in every site they went to.
Yeah. um, but then again, Mount Fuji is like almost Japan's like most famous, I guess, like national or geographic like site. It's the geographic site. Um, so it's not
Very true.
surprising. It's not surprising they would mention it. And plus, it's pretty big. After all, it is big. You can see it from ways away. And it's not like they're like 80 miles away from it where you can't see it. They're like I think generally within like 20 miles or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating this because I don't know length, but it's not like they're too far away where they can't see it. So it's not that surprising they would mention it. So yeah. So overall, what would you give the anime out of a 10?
I want to talk about one more thing before I give my rating.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it was the final episode or second to final episode
Yeah.
when they did their last group camping trip.
Yeah.
And what's the blonde hair girl's name?
Oh, Aoi.
Yeah, Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Her sister.
Oh, her
Her
sister.
younger sister. Who was waiting to see the capybaras.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
I want to say that was, even though the capybaras were in it for what, like 30 seconds to a minute,
Yeah.
I still think that was great because she ended up buying a plush.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I'm a little jelly.
And what's interesting is that all the places they went to are actual real places. So even this place where the capybaras are is an actual place. And you were like, we gotta go there.
Yeah, I'm like, if there is a shop, take my money. I'm buying a plush.
Anything capybara just makes your day better.
Yeah, just ever since
World Trigger?
World Trigger, thank you. Ever since World Trigger, just the capybaras, man. Anytime there's a capybara, it makes the anime just way better.
It's a weird coincidence because I actually did not know there was capybaras. Because this was a first watch through for me. Because a lot of the animes that I've shown Saki, I've watched before. But this one was actually a first watch through for both, him and me. So it was interesting. I never knew there was a capybara there, so it was kind of weird coincidence. I honestly feel like there's not that many. There's probably very rarely any capybaras in any anime, really. So this is probably never gonna happen again where we see a capybara, and if it does, that'd be very surprising, to be honest. So it was a nice surprise, seeing a capybara after a long time.
Yeah, I remember when they were planning the trip, the little sister's like, "We need to see the capybaras," and I remember I was telling you, if we don't see a capybara, because we were on the last couple episodes,
Mm-hmm.
like if we don't see a capybara, this anime is going down in points. You cannot say we're gonna see capybaras and not show a capybara.
Especially when all the characters were excited about it too.
Yeah, they're all excited.
And they delivered. The capybara sure indeed showed up.
It's 30 seconds of fame, man. That's all it needs.
Yep. And so, going back, what would you rate the anime overall out of a 10?
Uh, hmm. I'd give this like an 8 or a 9. I like how it was formatted because it
Mmm.
still showed that they were, high schoolers, right?
Yeah.
That they were high schoolers, so it kind of go back and forth between, camping and then they're in school a little bit, like,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it was just the only weird thing I thought, just because in the States you can't do this, I guess,
Yeah.
is they had jobs.
Oh, yeah. Part-time jobs.
Yeah, and so I was like, usually people don't hire, like, you have to be a certain age, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they have jobs. I'm like, that's a little odd to a person that grew up in the States.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would be like, that's kind of strange, but it is an anime, so
Yeah. It's really common in Japan, apparently, when you're in high school. It's common to have it's not really a mandatory thing, like expectation from society, but it's a really common thing that, um, a lot of high schoolers can get part-time jobs. There are parts and positions where high schoolers are hired, um, as a part-time specifically, um, and even more so in anime and manga. That's the way it's portrayed. Now, obviously, my actual knowledge in terms of actual, Japan and how they work as a society is very limited. But it's not, even in my high school, I heard a couple people working part-time jobs before, which was kind of surprising to me, just because I was just like, really, like you're working part-time job now? um,
yeah, honestly, I wouldn't hire any high schooler. I don't think they're smart. Like, I think some of them are smart, but like, I wouldn't think they're smart enough for like work.
yeah,
You're still young. You don't really care. You think you're invincible, and you kind of want to show off, which is really annoying.
mm-hmm.
But I don't think they'd be responsible enough to handle a job.
Yeah.
I would say you need at least a high school diploma first.
Yeah. And one quick thing I want to add, two things I want to add really. The animation quality was insanely high for a camping anime, rather.
Yeah, it was oddly really, really well animated.
Yeah, I think characters also designs were perfect. I feel like really well designed, really well looked. You know, expressions and everything. But also, one thing that surprised you a lot was car turn signalings.
Dude, it was goated, man. They're like, you know what? We're gonna take the time to animate the cars using a turn signal, and I'm like, holy crap!
And
An
even when
anime,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, an anime took the time to do that. For all those drivers who don't signal, you gotta watch this for that only, and you gotta learn how
I
to use
re-
a turn signal.
I remember even when she was like she stopped to the side of the road or whatever, in that place where you're allowed to stop, and like
Yeah.
she was like looking at her phone. She was looking at her phone to to stop and look. She wasn't really looking during driving, right? And
Yep.
which is responsibly driving. Ridden her in her moped or motorcycle. I think it's closer to moped or something like that. Um,
I think so, yeah.
and then when she, goes to rejoin the back in the road, there's no one there, like literally no one there, but she still signals to get back into the road.
Goated.
And you were just like, oh
I
my
forgot
god.
about that. Honestly, now that brings up more points. It might be a 10 out of 10 just for that.
um, so yeah, that was interesting, like just how much they even decided to do that.
Oh, wait, I might have to knock off half a point because they never showed anyone filling up gas once.
Oh yeah, that is
The
true.
unlimited gas tank.
That is true. That is true. Um, and so, what's it called? this is the first anime where we've completed watching, right? And almost during the time when we completed it, or what's it called? Almost completed it, or I want to say completely watched. A new season was announced.
That's right. I totally forgot about that.
And I did not know this. Apparently, it was announced last year, actually. That they just simply announced it, right? During October 22nd. And this is when the movie came out. We still have to watch the movie, by the way. And we definitely plan to. But it was just that they were saying, hey, we're gonna, make a season 3. But I didn't know that because, again, I never watched the anime until now. And season 3's video actually came out I think the day before we were about to finish watching, or the day of we were going to finish watching up season 2. And unfortunately, in both, I guess, the timing of it, it's going to be in 2024 when it first comes out. But also, you and I looked at the, trailer, and the characters look so different.
Yeah, the animation is very different.
Yeah, apparently it was announced that they are changing studios, which I kind of don't like, because I don't know. I really like the look of the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, the new season coming out just I don't know.
If I had to describe it, it looked almost as if they were in Pokemon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like okay, I can see that now.
Meanwhile, the first 2 seasons really felt like its own unique way, but the new studio handling it kind of just makes them look like they're, it looks too off.
I want to say a little too cartoonish.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? So the first 2 animes, I know exactly why it looks so off. It looks textured. Like the way they looks textured. They have like their clothing is textured, their like, hair is textured, but here in the new anime it just looks kind of like laminated.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I can understand what you mean there.
Kind of like shiny.
Yeah, they are shiny from what you
Um,
showed me.
Least to say their whole looks are different too. I could not recognize Rin at first. I was like, who's that?
Yeah, they do have a different feel to it. Like it'll be the same characters, but it doesn't look like the same characters.
Yeah. So I am very cautious about the anime. I don't think I'm even optimistic at the moment, even despite me really liking the first 2 seasons. If it was definitely the same studio as the first 2 seasons, I would have been like, oh my god, like, I can't wait. But you can't win them all, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'd say we're a little more hesitant. I'd say we still give it a try, but
Yeah.
no high expectations.
Yeah, unfortunately. But this may be because it might be closer to the actual manga style itself, interestingly enough. But I don't know. I haven't read the manga at all. But, when the time comes, maybe you'll see us in a year later, when we finish the anime and, make a recording out of this. But for now, I think we talked about what we really want to talk about for this anime. So I'm gonna end it here. So I'm Jin.
And I'm Saki.
And this is The Casuals, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.